I read many books about leadership, running a business, making money, managing people, customers, suppliers, investors, and it all sounds utopia, which makes me wonder if the writer has ever done it or just spent time talking about it. True achiever leaders have learned that the path to success is not straight and that you have to have the ability to cope with many challenges, especially your health and well-being. My guest today knows all about that and the dangers of not recognizing when you're becoming stressed out. He's been there and now dedicates his career to helping hard-driving leaders avoid the mistakes that he made. He's the author of the Amazon bestseller, Lighten Your Day. Welcome, stress relief expert, Professor Pete Alexander.
Malcolm, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Excellent. Well, I've been looking forward to this because it's the end of the day, Pete, and I'm stressed. Pete, as I said in my opening piece, you've been there. Tell us where there was and how you arrived at what you do today.
Yeah, so it's a great question there, Malcolm. Back in 2008, I had a perfect storm of stressful activities that culminated in my diagnosis with stress-induced diabetes. The problem was that I didn't listen to my body about what stress was doing to it. So I continued to burn the candle for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room and an extended stay in the intensive care unit with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. For your listeners who don't know what that is, my body was actually eating itself alive because of my stress. Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I realized it was an epiphany moment for me. And I realized, you know what? I have to do things differently. Otherwise, I'm not going to be around much longer. And so I started experimenting with different stress relief tools and techniques. And I noticed that not only did my stress start going down, my glucose numbers as a diabetic were going down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was as if I had discovered the fountain of youth. So I decided, I have to share this newfound knowledge with others, and it's been a wonderful opportunity to make a difference in people's lives.
Excellent. Now, let's get some clarity before we move on. This may seem a layman's question, a basic question, but what is stress and where does it come from and how is it a danger?
Yeah, so from a definition standpoint, so stress, it's physical or emotional tension, and it can come from any kind of event or thought that makes you feel frustrated, angry, or nervous. And so your stress is basically your body's reaction to a challenge or a demand. The thing about it that people forget is, or may not realize, is that there's good stress and bad stress. Good stress, also known as eustress, that's the kind of stress that we need to get things done. So if we are really happy at work, we are proud of what we're doing, it helps us hit our deadlines and achieve certain goals. What we want to avoid is the bad stress. And the bad stress is typically one of two kinds of stress. One is rumination, and rumination is where we look at our past and we think, oh, I did this or I didn't do that. And you keep going back into the past and beat yourself up about why something, didn't happen or did happen. And you can't change the past. You can learn from the past, but you can't change the past. But if you keep on going back and ruminating about it, that causes negative stress. The other negative stress that is really difficult for your body and challenging is anxiety over a future event. So if you imagine there's an event that you're worried about, concerned about, maybe it's a difficult conversation you have to have, and you start really churning inside about everything that possibly could happen about that event negatively, it's going to really wreak havoc in your body. And so if you can minimize that rumination in the past or that anxiety you have in the future, then you're going to be much more balanced.
Brilliant. Yeah. Now, I've personally fallen into the trap of being very stressed out, mainly through traveling, through speaking gig after gig around the globe. But I've been lucky, and my body has said to me, hold on, by saying, give me a sore throat or something like that.
Mhm.
Usually I've listened, but it's not easy as you strive to meet your professional commitments. So, what stress warning signs are the most common?
Yeah, it's good that you said that. So, we tend to manifest stress both mentally and physically. So mentally, it might be as simple as lack of concentration. So instead of being able to focus, you're not able to focus. That's one sign. You could have mood swings where you go from happy to sad or angry at a moment's notice. It could be panic attacks that you've never had before, but now you're having it, or anxiety, as we talked about earlier. Another one that's a very common one is prescription drug or alcohol addiction. Those are all signs that you're mentally stressed. Physically, as you say, the sore throat or something. So frequent colds, for example, maybe you used to get a cold once every winter, and now all of a sudden you're getting a cold once every month or every 6 weeks. That's a sign. Probably the first sign that your body would tell you would be back and shoulder stiffness, because when we're stressed and sitting at a desk, we tend to hunch over. And so that's a classic sign. Uh, Excessive or not enough sleep is a perfect example of being physically stressed. Digestive disorders, so things like your stomach is just not well, and no amount of Pepto Bismol, for example, will fix it. Maybe you're reaching for the aspirin bottle every day or every other day instead of occasionally, so you're getting these migraines, and you don't know why you're getting them. And the other one is weight fluctuations, either losing or gaining weight rapidly. For example, right before I was diagnosed with stress-induced diabetes, I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. I was
Wow.
in my mid 40s, and I wasn't dieting. I wasn't doing anything special in my exercise. It was just the normal stuff. And all of a sudden it just started coming down. And at first I thought it was fantastic because I had so much trouble losing weight. But once that 30th pound came off, I decided I better have myself checked out. And sure enough, stress-induced diabetes.
Wow. I was nodding my head a few times there, Pete, nodding my head. It's well documented that the culture within a business often makes stress a stigma, with people frightened to admit it in fear of losing their jobs or lack of promotion, or that awful expression, being seen as a loser.
Mhm.
How should a leader cultivate a culture of consciousness that allows people to feel comfortable to talk about their well-being? And by the way, we promote such a culture in our Conscious Leader show. Your thoughts, Pete, on delivering the right atmosphere or culture?
Yeah, that's a great question, Malcolm. My suggestion or recommendation in that is that the leader should show vulnerability and describe when he or she is stressed out and didn't ask for help. So they give an example of it, whether it was something that was happening at work or something that was happening in their personal life with their family, or other situation. Because when the leader shows their vulnerability, that creates more trust with their team, and their team is more willing to then share what's going on with them. And when you have that trust among a group and they can talk about what's going on stress wise, they can work as a team, or at least one on one, the manager and the employee, where they can help take care of each other as opposed to just letting them burn out.
Mm. Yeah. Now, just before I move into my next question, Pete, I'd just like to point out to viewers that behind me on the screen there, they can find your URL, where there's a huge amount of help and resource at that website, but also more information on how to go, the variety of ways to get in your book,
Mhm.
Lighten Your Day, an Amazon bestseller. What's it about in a nutshell, and what can it do for the reader?
Sure. So after I had my hospital stay with diabetic ketoacidosis, my coworkers and my friends and my family saw that I was applying these different tools and techniques, and they said, you ought to write a book. And so I did some research, and I found that all the other books out there about stress were focusing on maybe one technique or just kind of in theory. And nobody has the time to read a 300-page book on meditation. The reality is that most of us are stressed because we don't have very much time. And so what I decided to do was write a book that has over 100 tips, 90, probably 95% of them you can implement in 5 minutes or less. And what's great about that is it's for the reality of when you're just about to go into a stressful situation like a conversation, or maybe you have to give a presentation, or you just got a phone call from somebody and you can feel your blood boiling. It's designed for you to find techniques that you can implement very quickly. And the great thing is, if one doesn't work for you, you haven't spent a lot of time, you haven't invested a lot. But if you find one that works, you utilize that as much as you need to. And even if you implement one technique that helps you, or you do it for 1 or 2 minutes a day, if you do that regularly, the long-term benefit of doing that is amazing. It really has a long-term health benefits, but you have to utilize it regularly and get into a habit. And so that's why I wanted to create a book where people can just grab one tip, try it. Hey, it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, no big deal. You invested 1 or 2 minutes, try another one if it didn't work.
Well, let's delve further into your light and stress tool. Just a little bit more what it's about and how does it work, and is it suitable for anyone of any age?
That's a good question. So the Lighten is actually an acronym for the 7 areas of stress where we manifest from. And that's what I found from my research for the book. So the L stands for livelihood or your career. The I stands for your imagination or your conscious mind, which is 5% of your brain. The G stands for genius or your unconscious, which is the other 95% of your brain. The H is for your physical health. The T is for time that you have available. E is your environment. And N is your network of relationships. These 7 areas are the ones that are going to cause you the most stress. And so each of the techniques that are in there are designed primarily for one of those areas, but can be used in different areas as well. And because the L in the livelihood, because it's our career, it's more suitable for basically 16 years or above, but anybody can get a benefit from some of these tips.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, you're no stranger to video, and I'm seeing that already, as you have a weekly vlog. What's your intention with it? By the way, I really do like the stress relief tools you offer, especially the latest on clarifying expectations. Layman's question, is there not a danger of thinking too much about stress that you become stressed?
Oh, that's a very astute observation, Malcolm. Yeah, you can get stressed over being stressed. And so the whole purpose of what's in the book, as well as the weekly blog that I do, is I want to give people an opportunity to try something that just takes, 1 or 2 minutes. And when it only takes 1 or 2 minutes, it doesn't feel like it's a burden to give it a try, because if you have to do something that's going to take an hour, half an hour, something like that, that's a lot of commitment, especially if you haven't tried something before. And humans are not change, they don't like change very, very easily. We're change adverse. But 1 or 2 minutes, if you think it might work, why not? And so the fact that you get a quick video, you get or 2-3 paragraphs to read to try and implement something that works. And what my readers and subscribers, they all tell me is they say, thank you, because I needed this particular tip right at this moment. I was able to try it and it worked. Or, I tried it, it didn't work for me, but this other one works perfectly well for us. So as you said, the clarifying expectations, it's just as simple as, don't just assume that you and, let's say, your supervisor or your employee understands what the task is. You make sure you clarify what is supposed to be done at a certain time so that you avoid that future stress.
Mm. And as we recall, assume stands to make an ass out of you and me. I know. Give me what you regard as the top 3 mistakes or assumptions that people make about stress in business.
Very first one that I alluded to at the beginning of our discussion is trading your health for your career or other responsibilities. The fact of the matter is, if you lose your health, nothing else matters. And if you think about that, the last time that you were really sick, I mean, Malcolm, think about, if you were really sick, did you feel like doing anything other than lying in bed? Chances are no. And so when you are sick, you lose your health, you're no good to your company, you're no good to, your family, your friends, etc. So take care of your health. Do not trade your mental and physical health for your career. That's the number one that I see the problem. The second one is people think that stress management is something that requires a lot of time, and it doesn't. Literally, as I mentioned earlier, if you implement one tip that takes 1 or 2 minutes a day and you use that regularly and you get into the habit of it, the long-term benefits will be immense. You just have to start. And, the other big mistake that I see is people thinking that their stress doesn't affect the others around them. And that is not true. Whether it's your spouse, whether it's your coworkers, anybody who you are interacting with, if you are continuously stressed, you are going to affect those people. They're going to be either worried to be asking you any questions or to set you off, or they're going to avoid you. Or they're not going to tell you what you need to know. So don't think that just because you're stressed, nobody's going to notice.
Even my dog notices. Every time my wife and him are stressed, he walks round and round the table.
Yep. Yep.
Peter, I like to think that I'm, in Disney World, and I'm giving you 3 wishes, when you wish upon a star. If I were to give you 3 wishes for the understanding of the acceptance of stress in business, what would those 3 wishes be?
Well, I'll start with number one, the same number one that I did in the last question, which is that people take their mental and physical health seriously. Don't trade your health for your career or other responsibilities. Just don't do that. If everybody could follow that guidance, this world would be a better place. The second one would be that people would have gratitude for what they already have. So if you think about it, it's really easy for us to look at the negative of something. Oh, I don't have this, or you have jealousy of someone else having something. But we all can be grateful for what we already have. It could be as simple as, hey, you woke up this morning. Be grateful you are alive. Or, grateful for the opportunity to talk with somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time, or grateful that the weather's nice. Those kind of things that everyone can do. Those are the kind of things that I would love to see people take into their business. And the other one would be just that helping employees, who are stressed out, minimize the negative effects of stress that come from that rumination or the anxiety that we talked about earlier.
Professor Pete Alexander, I'm less stressed now. I have to invite you back again for more treatment. Thank you for a brilliant interview.
Oh, Malcolm, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate the time that your listeners have given to the show.